Let's get today's event started. Stagecraft for Chat GPT, leveraging theater principles to craft AI prompts for effective training with Josh Penzel and Chuck Sigmund. Welcome to Training Magazine Network. Oh, and we need to restart your video. Sorry, something went amiss there.
Don't worry, this wouldn't be a training or a theater related event without some technical issues.
Of course. Welcome.
There you go.
Thanks so much. Well, hey, everyone, welcome. And thank you so much for the active chat. I hope we will keep it active throughout this presentation. As we all know, in Shakespeare's time, theater was a raucous event with lots of back and forth. I'm Josh Penzel. I am the artistic director and co-founder of TheaterThink. I also work on AI custom solutions with ELB. And I'm so thrilled to be here from Seattle, Washington. I'll throw out there real quickly, before I got into the whole L&D profession about 15 years ago, I was a theater maker and a theater director in New York. I see that I have a lot of colleagues or other artists that are on the webinar today. So welcome, y'all. I appreciate it. Oh, that's awesome. I love seeing all these theater pros. Well, Chuck, I got to take the stage for a second. And I specialized in musical theater, got my MFA at Brooklyn College, and I still have my union card for SDC, or the, it used to be the Society of Stage Directors and Choreographers, now just the Stage Directors and Choreographers Society. So happy to be here. Chuck, yeah.
I just had to laugh, Josh, because right after saying you're from New York and you got that New York accent and you're talking about Long Island, and then you say, hey, y'all, because you forgot to mention that you're also from Austin, Texas, right?
Well, not Houston, Texas.
Houston,
I wish Houston. Austin, but yeah, my parents made the journey from Long Island. There you go, down to Texas, and then I went to school in Chicago. So I'm a whole mix of dialects and
you're a mutt,
sounds.
that's for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, and Chuck, who are you?
I'm Chuck Sigmund. I am the executive director and also co-founder of TheaterThink. And TheaterThink really is about how we use theater principles to improve our learning programs. And we'll talk a lot about that today. I also want to give a couple of plugs, though, before we get going. The first one, I know Phil was mentioning the upcoming Training Magazine 2024 conference in Orlando in February. I noticed in the chat that there are several people in the healthcare industry here. During that conference, I am running a track of 6 different sessions that are specific to L&D in the healthcare industry. So if that's something that you think you might be interested in, please come and join me down in Orlando.
And TheaterThink might, we're not sure, but might be making a
we're working on
a reprise. Yeah, there you go.
And the other thing I wanted to mention before we get started is we're going to be talking about AI today, and we're going to be talking principally about ChatGPT. And I will likely offend some people during this session, because I'm going to tell you right off the top that I think that 99% of people who are using ChatGPT right now are using it incorrectly. And they're doing things like going out and buying prompt engineering from people on LinkedIn or Instagram, people who have these buckets of predefined prompts. And the reason I'm telling you that I think you're doing it incorrectly is those prompts were not defined for you. They were not designed for your specific use case. And what we're going to talk about today is how you can take your skills, your background, your knowledge of context, and really enhance the prompts that you share with ChatGPT to get back a better result.
Not only that, but maybe making it easy to create your own prompts. Who knows?
There you go. There you go. Shh, I wasn't going to share that yet.
Well, Chuck, we got to give it's called foreshadowing.
There you go. So with that, Josh, I just want to check in before we get going. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Good. Thanks. I'm a little chilly, but doing well. How about you, Chuck? How are you doing?
You know, I got some great news this week. My finger's healing up, so I'm feeling pretty good.
That's great. Well, hey, that's awesome. But can I ask you, Chuck, if you were a genre of film, any type of genre, any type of film that could describe, how you're feeling right now, how you're doing right now, what genre of film or theater would that be? Or, or book would that be? And why?
It's got to be like an action film, one of those where there's a lot of drama going on, but lots of excitement and energy. I think I'm pretty filled with that energy. You probably noticed that already. I've had one too many caffeine drinks this morning, but really excited about what's to come. And I think we've got a lot of things that we can do here this morning, and a lot of success.
That's awesome. And I'd love to know how people, how's everyone else? How about everyone else? How you doing? But more importantly, if you were a genre of theater, film, or let's say novels, literature, what would you be? Musical, comedy. And for those of you who are putting stuff in, title a show, because we're in the middle of Tech Week and opening a new show this weekend. Congrats, Minerva. That's awesome. What we used to call Heck Week, rom-coms, Coen brother films. Can I ask y'all also to say why? Yeah. Why musical comedy? Why dark cabaret? Why a slightly violent musical? Maybe Sweeney Todd. I don't know. Why a mix of sci-fi and high fantasy? Yeah, go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, while they're putting those in there, I kind of wanted to reflect on that question you asked me, because we spend a lot of time asking those basic questions. Hi, how you doing? Hi, how you doing? And I like your question a whole lot better. And the reason I like your question a whole lot better is it made me think, right? It wasn't just, I couldn't just give a quick response of, oh, I'm fine. It made me think about, what does that really mean? What's the context around why I'm fine? What is it that's making me feel the way I'm feeling? And I think when we start talking about AI and stuff, that really is where we want to go.
Yeah. And you know what? Not just that, but notice how this is also allowing us to not only connect with some sort of different sense, right? A sort of, a different way of thinking. It's also letting us think out the box. But more than that, we all have these different ways of interpreting this. And by the way, this is not just something that works with human beings. This works with AI too. I went to ChatGPT and I asked it, if there was an image that represented how you are feeling right now, what would that image be and why? Can you create that image for me? And this was the image it created. And I would love for y'all, there's my Texas coming out, to tell me what you think this image represents. What does this image say to you? This is what ChatGPT said it feels like. So relaxation, serenity, beachy, calm, collected, peaceful, tranquility, horizon continues. I like that.
Fascinating that just from this one image, right? It's not even a photograph, but this one digitally created image, people are getting all of these different emotions, right? And they're connecting to it.
And here's what I think is most fascinating, right? I asked ChatGPT why, and it said neutral, expansive. Those were some of the key words that it used. And notice how, even though that's what it was saying was this image, notice how we are having different responses to this image. In some cases, responses that are wildly different from what ChatGPT said was the reason it created this image. So we got calm, retro vibes, right? Escalating different, but smooth, hopeful, reflective. Sharknado.
Sharknado. Love that.
So there's something really powerful here, which is both the opening question I asked, right? Which was try to describe how you're feeling in a genre. And if there was an image that could describe you, what would it be and why? Creates a metaphor, right? And is a metaphor that allows us all to reconnect to each other, to the source of it in very personal and different ways. And in fact, it starts to create a conversation, as we can see what's happening right here. By the way, what software did I use to create the AI image? ChatGPT. So we'll get to that. And every single image in this entire presentation was created by ChatGPT's DALL-E 3, which you can just go to ChatGPT and ask it to create an image. I think especially if you have Pro, and it'll do it. But what this metaphor is doing, and what this exercise, both these exercises do, is they allow us to create a common language, right? A common language that sort of aligns in how we're speaking. And Chuck, when we were at Alexa together at Amazon, this is actually how we sparked upon this idea of TheaterThink, right?
Yeah. And, I'm sure everybody on this call has had this experience. I reached out to Josh and I said, look, I'm really struggling here as an L&D leader. I've got together with several different leaders within the business. I had, I might have had an operations manager, and I had a finance director, and I had some L&D folks, and I had all sorts of different people in the room when we were having a conversation about building a program. And I walked out of the meeting feeling like everything went great. We all had a common understanding about what happened. And I found out very quickly afterwards that people had different perspectives of where we landed and different understandings of everything. And it occurred to me after Josh and I talked that what happens is we go into these conversations and we have an understanding of what we believe certain words or certain language means. And I'll give a perfect example. The word objective. The word objective in learning means a very specific thing, right? We talk about learning objectives all the time. But if you've got a C-suite executive in that room, that person's probably thinking about business objectives. And if you've got an operations manager in the room, they're thinking about objectives in terms of metrics. How many calls do they have to handle in a meeting, etc. You got a finance person, they're talking about financial objectives. So while I'm in the room talking about objectives and how we have to meet all of our objectives, and I've got this sense of everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about, I walked away realizing that that's not exactly what happened. And what's fascinating is the more that Josh and I talked, the more we realized that the language of theater really does encapsulate what we do, not just in L&D, but in business and in our organizations. I'm going to pass it back over to you for just a minute there, Josh.
And before we even get to this performance review concept, I want to say, I think I said to you at that time, right? It sounds like one of you's in a Shakespeare play and one of you's in a musical. Right, your metaphors were not aligned. The connective tissue wasn't there. You said objective, and one person thought it was something. Someone thought it was something else. By the way, I highly recommend that metaphor question. Right, what is the weather pattern you are today? What is the genre you are today? Any of those? Do those at your next meeting, and see how incredibly different the conversation goes, and how much more you learn about people, rather than simply saying, "How are you doing? What happened this weekend?" But what this brings me to, and Chuck and I discovered this, was theater is actually a great metaphor for business. And it's going to be a great metaphor for talking to AI. We call them performance reviews at the end of every year, right? We have job roles that we are trying to interview for or take on. And what we realized is, us as L&D professionals, I realized this a while ago, but people would always say to me, "Josh, because you have this acting background," right? I was trained as an actor at Northwestern before I decided I'm going to go direct. You are a performer. When you used to facilitate, when everything was about facilitation and training, remember that when we were in front of all our classes? You're a performer, so you can perform and engage your audience. And I said, no, I'm a director. I'm in a rehearsal room. Right? That's my training lab. That's my classroom at that time. Every individual here is an actor. And what I'm trying to do is, when they go back and perform for their employer who has written them a script, I want them to be able to do it authentically and engaging in a way that makes sense to them. Now, why is theater a good metaphor for this and not necessarily film? Where in theater, you're trying to present, perform the same exact show 8 times a week, and you literally have the same words, the same script, the same places to move. Imagine someone who's been in Phantom of the Opera for 20 years, and they're literally moving to the same spot every single time. And not only that, but if you see, let's say, Jersey Boys in Japan, or you see it in Vegas, or you see it in New York, or you see it on the road, it has to be almost exactly the same performance, even though it's wildly different actors. And so how do we do that? How do we get a customer service representative that we need to train to do it in an engaging and authentic way, right? We always talk about that employee engagement, right? But what makes great actors, the ones that you look at and you say, wow, I believe them, versus these I don't believe, it's that they're bringing a little piece of themselves to it. And what we as learning professionals are doing, whether you are training in a room and facilitating, or you are trying to create a learning experience, is you are trying to enable them in this rehearsal room, right, of a learning learning intervention or a learning program, to perform their role authentically for their audience, who is the customer, right? And what this led us to do, so this idea of performance review, we suddenly realized, wow, theater is a great metaphor for business. And it actually really encapsulates what we do as L&D professionals. And I see some people throwing out information here, which I love. And I'm going to try to go back and forth and talk. And by the way, this image, what I loved about is I asked it, can you create this performance review, right? And duties, scripts, there's a mask on someone, right? But what this led us to do is realize there's sort of a model here. And we came up with a model called the 4Ms. I'm just going to briefly talk over them. Yeah, Chuck.
I'm going to jump in for you first, because I want to highlight something that Josh pointed out. He talked about being a director and in the theater being a director. And what does a director do, right? The director gives directions. They give notes. They give feedback. All of you likely either are directors, work for directors, or work with directors in your business life, right? You wouldn't expect that director to actually be doing the activity that they're trying to guide, right? Much like in the theater, you will never see the director on stage during the performance. You'll see the director's influence in that performance, hopefully, if they've directed it correctly. And the players who are playing out their roles will be able to respond and perform appropriately and accurately based on the direction and the notes they've been given. So I think it's really, again, I think this fits in very well to how we're going to approach interacting with ChatGPT, because in many ways, we're going to be directors with the AI bot to teach it how to do what we want it to do.
Well, not just to teach it, to suggest how it can do it authentically, right? One of the things with directing and acting, and my actors here, I've just realized there's two people who realized they were on the road together in Phantom of the Opera, or maybe it was Maury Eston's Phantom. I don't know. But we don't say, do it this way. You don't give a line reading, right? What you do is you say, I want you to achieve an objective. A learning objective sounds familiar, right? And then you try to coach them on what tactics or actions might help them do that. And the way you do it is by making suggestions and asking questions. You have a good director. Some directors different, right? You're basically saying, move from there to there. I don't care how you figure it out. And the actor has to come up with this sort of movement themselves. But it really is an amazing way to think about, a metaphor to think about what we do. And what we realize is theater is not the only metaphor. It's the metaphor we're going to focus on a lot today. But we realize there's actually a process by which you can apply any metaphor that works for you to this thing. We call it the 4Ms: metaphor, mechanics, modality, and muse. So the metaphor is what you choose to engage with as a metaphor. We're going to use theater today, but let's say you want to say, and sometimes I'll say this, what is this group like? Is this a Mission Impossible team where everyone has their specialty and you're pulling in different people to do the mission that's impossible for us? Or is this like a NASCAR race where everyone has to do something real quick and we got to get this out in 2 seconds? Or are you coaching a football team where you have different people in different roles and they have to go perform it themselves, right? So what is the metaphor you're going to use? Once you choose a metaphor that everyone can get on board with or that works for you, you then start engaging with the mechanics of that metaphor, right? If I was using cooking as a metaphor, I would say, all right, what are the ingredients? What's the recipe? What's the order of things we're going to do it? Do I, is it a little too salty? Is it a little too sweet? And as you begin talking through this, as you begin engaging in this metaphor through the mechanics of that metaphor, through the language of it, right, through the way that we're using it, you start seeing you start playing it in this real time, in this modality. You're actually doing it. You're doing it with other people. You're reenacting it, to use my theater example. And then at some point, you have that aha moment, the muse moment, where everyone goes, I get it. I understand. We're on the same language now. In the theater, and for those of you who've been in the theater, sometimes what we do is we start a table read and say, hey, here's an image that this play means to me. Or I want everyone to bring in an idea or a piece of music or an image that represents this thing to me. And the reason we do that is because everyone's going to have different responses to something, right, that is not binary. And this is how we're going to use AI most effectively in order to create and get us the results that we want. Is not by necessarily being explicit, which we can do, but by trying to allow the AI to work within boundaries, right? And then make suggestions to it to achieve what we want. Chuck, do you have anything to say about the 4Ms before we move on?
So I think the piece where we often get stuck in this is that metaphor, right? What is the contextual environment in which we're working that we want to bring to bear as we're thinking through these problems, as we're trying to come up with a solution. Once we get past that, and you'll see this as we work through ChatGPT in a few minutes, once we get past that, the other pieces seem to fall into place. So where you really want to focus your energies is on that metaphor. What is the construct in which you're working so that you can move forward? That muse moment we'll talk about also in a minute, as that true aha moment. For me, that in the past when I was doing classroom training, you talked about classroom training, I've always loved that moment where you see the light turn on over somebody's head. It's clear that it's connected for them, right? And again, as we go through these steps with ChatGPT, we'll be able to see that aha moment where we get to the solution that we've been looking for.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about directing the AI. Imagine the AI is an actor. Imagine it is your learner. I sometimes point out L&D professionals are the professionals who are most equipped to work with AI and to get the most out of it, because your jobs, our jobs, or our job, my singular versus plural isn't working quite in my brain right now, right? Our job is to enable and to get every single individual to authentically do something, independent of who they are, right? And to do that the best, we're giving them series of actions and an objective. We're not saying do it in this specific way. When even in sales we provide, or in customer service, we provide a script, we generally don't want someone to read off the script. Actors are very good at learning a script and doing it authentically. Most people, though, they need to know what's the purpose behind the script, and then they do it. We're going to try using those same principles in working with AI. And rather than thinking about how am I going to develop the perfect prompt at the front, and how am I going to create and get the answer I want? And Chuck, you have something really interesting sometimes you talk about, right? But
yeah,
we're going to think, how can I make suggestions and ask questions of the AI and let it do its thing most effectively? And I'm going to show you what this looks like in GPT in just a second. But Chuck, you like to talk about the difference between Google and AI,
yeah.
and you might offend people here, maybe. I don't know.
And that's okay. This is the part I kind of alluded to early at the beginning. So I want to talk briefly about how we approach AI, right? A lot of people who are using ChatGPT right now are using it just like they've used Google in the past, because we've now been using Google for a very long time. You're very adept at using Google. Google is an answer engine. What I mean by that is you ask Google a question, Google gives you an answer back. And in fact, in many cases, gives you millions of answers back, generally about the same answer. But that's where it stops, right? You ask a question, it gives you an answer. Okay, now I have a different question. I ask a question, it gives me an answer. Where we see a difference with ChatGPT and AI, other AI tools, these are solution-driven tools. These are reasoning engines. So rather than going to ChatGPT and saying, hey, how many of these do I need to do that? And just getting an answer, which is a Google answer. What we should be using ChatGPT for, and the power of ChatGPT, is having it help us think through a larger conceptual problem and get to a solution. So, for example, in the L&D world, if what you're trying to do is build a training program for people who are learning how to use a forklift, I can't go to Google and say, Google, give me a training program to teach people who have never used a forklift how to use a forklift. It's going to say, I don't know what that means. Unless it can find a predefined program that already exists, and it'll give you that. And that may or may not be what you want, but that's it. Google can't help beyond that. But I can go to ChatGPT and I can work with ChatGPT and have it help me think through what would that program be like? What would the different components of the program be? How long would they be? How would I present it, right? I can come up with a really rich concept of what that program would be. Now, I want to stop for just a second. I want to ask a question and have people answer in the chat. What does AI stand for? And this is a really important conceptual piece, I think. So I'm gonna just stop it. Artificial intelligence. All right.
At least people are paying attention. We got appreciative inquiry. I like it. Oh, wait, JD, JD said
Another
something I think you're
idea,
gonna like.
Leo. I like that. So I will tell you, most of you have been brainwashed by the media, and I'm sorry about that, that you believe that AI stands for artificial intelligence. AI does not stand for artificial intelligence. It stands for augmented intelligence. And here's why. I want you all at some point today, tomorrow, I want you to go to your laptop, open up ChatGPT, and stare at it. And I want you to see what information ChatGPT gives you. The answer is going to be nothing. ChatGPT cannot do anything for you without you giving it an input, without you asking for information, without you engaging with it. If
Yeah.
you think about ChatGPT as, if you're an instructional designer, maybe you're a senior ID, ChatGPT is the junior instructional designer that I just hired for you and gave you. This person came into your business, they know nothing about your business, and they're sitting next to you at your desk and you're doing your work. And this junior ID is not doing anything. Why? Because you haven't given them the context. You haven't let them know what help you need. Now, you could start to say, oh, I need some help defining some images to do this that will show this in my course. And now your junior ID, augmented intelligence, can help you. It can give you that support. So if you think about ChatGPT as your trusted assistant who has all of the knowledge that's available on the internet and in the world, as long as you're asking the right questions, as long as you're partnering with it, right? This is co-generative AI. You're using ChatGPT to generate something new, something different, something beautiful that didn't exist
Yeah.
before, specific to you. And I'm going to make one last point, and this is what I alluded to earlier. People who are selling prompts on the internet. I mean, I could put together a box of 100 prompts and sell them right now for $99. I don't know, whatever amount. The reason that's a bad idea is they are not knowledgeable of your context and your specific need, right? Their prompts are going to be very, trying to think of the word,
Generic.
almost, yeah, very generic, scenario based prompts, right? They're just going to be just ask this, ask this, ask this, boom. And in fact, in most cases, what they're selling you is just one prompt, whereas an interaction with ChatGPT involves many prompts until we get to our solution.
And I promise you we're about to get into GPT. I want to say one thing, Jennifer Bosworth, you pointed out something, which is ChatGPT is an LLM, a large language model. And AI has been around for a long time. Chuck and I both worked at Alexa, right? Which I have to be careful sometimes saying because it'll start talking to me. But, you know, we've had Siri, we've had Alexa, Google, even before that, AI has existed. The difference between generative AI or co-generative AI now with these large language models, which allows it basically to learn for you to talk to it in a human way, right? But for it to learn almost immediately from what we're talking about it. And it has a memory, which is super important, right? And so I just wanted to make sure I hit on that, which was it is a large language model. And that large language model permits it to be AI or augmented intelligence or augmented reality. I'm sorry, augmented intelligence. But it is co-generative AI in the sense that it still needs you to help it. We're not sentient yet, although maybe that's going to be there. And Chuck, you were saying about the learning and development or you know, the junior engineer. The way I sometimes say about it is this is the most brilliant baby in the entire world, right? It has the entire world. It knows every single thing in the world, and yet it doesn't know contextually what it means necessarily. Yeah. It's like that old Star Trek episode, if any of my original Star Trek series, Trelane, where this guy has bottles of wine and food, but it has no taste. The fire is not hot because although we're looking at everything and know the world's information, it can't relate it to anything. So Chuck, I'd really love to get into GPT because
let me make one more point about the difference between Google and AI. And I think this is the critical point. With Google, I pointed out, you ask a question, you get an answer. Now you ask a different question, you get an answer. The beauty of ChatGPT is it's a conversation. I ask a question, it gives me an answer. I then reflect on what it said, and I ask it a question related to that. And it gives me something else that is related, right? We're building on it. The beauty here is I can get 10, 15 iterations down towards the bottom, and I can say, oh, hey, you remember on step 2 when you said this? Could you take that and now add it into where we're at and improve on where we are? That memory feature, the function of having a conversation where ChatGPT knows what it interacted with you about at step 1 or at any step in between, is absolutely paramount to being able to drive solutions.
Yeah, so we're going to show you how this conversation works. I have 2 examples. Before that, I just want to try to put some mechanisms to this metaphor, right? So first, I'm going to choose a play. For me, this is what is the problem I am trying to solve, right? The second one, and Chuck, are you driving this, or do you want me to click? Because I don't
No,
want.
I got
Great. So then I'm going to set the scene. So I'm going to say, hey, here's the problem. Here's the scene you're in, right? So you want to solve this problem, right? I'm trying to create a training program for customer service representatives. I work at a company that does X, Y, and Z. These are the type of people I'm dealing with. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is cast the actors. You are the role of this person, or you are the role of these people. And we'll talk about that in a second. And I'm going to then give it suggestions and ask it. This is really the powerful thing. You could skip 1, 2, and 3, or just start with one of those, frankly, as long as then you're getting to the asks and suggestions. And I want to point out, I'm not saying tell it, right? Because I think it's more powerful to say, what do you think? Or could you do this, that, and the other? And then this is the really fun part, what Chuck likes to call the magic sauce to this whole thing, or the secret sauce. You're going to lock the script. So I'm actually then going to take the AI, the LLM, the machine learning, the code generative, whatever you want to call it, right? And I am going to ask it to create the prompt at the end of the discussion. I'm going to ask it to lock what it did so then I can use that again. And in fact, now I have a repeatable performance that I can run over and over and over again to get what I need out of it. I'm going to show you what this looks like, Chuck. I know you're itching to say something, and I'm going to share my screen.
That last piece about the secret sauce, I think you kind of gloss over it, but I want people to really understand what he just said. So I've been interacting with ChatGPT now for half an hour, 45 minutes. We've gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth 50 times. And I finally got my solution. The thing I was looking for, I love it. I can now say in my next prompt, hey, ChatGPT, I want you to go back through everything we've just done. And I want you to create the one magic prompt based on everything we interacted about that would get us to this solution. One single prompt that if I came back tomorrow and put that prompt in, this is what we would end up with.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of this tool.
Yeah, and I'm going to, Anita, you asked, let's stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to share my screen. Anita, you asked if I can repeat the explanation. I'm going to, but I want to do it with a visual. So let's get into ChatGPT, right? Which, by the way, although I'm showing you this in ChatGPT, that does not mean that you could not program this using APIs and all sorts of other stuff. And I'll show you even how you could ask GPT to walk you through that. All right. So,
and while that's pulling up, I just wanted to comment. I think the name is Ilana Lehman. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced it. You say you found it helpful to limit how many suggestions ChatGPT provides. Absolutely spot on, right? There are a lot of times you might want to say, hey, give me an answer of 200 words or less, or describe this thing with 5 bullet points, or summarize this with the top 3. That's always very valuable.
Cool. So I can't see any. Can you hear me first, Chuck? Someone said they lost my audio.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yep. All right. So here's the example. I'm going to show a good one, and then I'm going to show like how you can just, even if you didn't want to start with any of this. But first, I'm going to choose the play. So what is the problem I am trying to solve? Right? What's the play? Okay. You're trying to improve CSAT scores for the customer service department. Bam. That's my problem. Now I'm going to set the scene. I'm going to say, here's some contextual information in order to help you. Okay, so you work for a large tech company selling SaaS solutions to help manufacturing companies optimize their supply chains, whatever. Okay. The 3 largest complaints you get are this, that, and the other. So the problem I want to solve, the play, and now the scene, the context around it. And you can go as little or as much as you want from this. Now I'm going to cast the actors. I'm going to say who I want you to be. So first I'm going to say, and this is also, notice I didn't say actor, I said actors. Assess the problem as if you're a strategic consultant specializing in improving CSAT scores. Then propose a solution. Next, take on the role of the instructional designer and put together a training program that executes on that solution. Then I want you to review the program as if you're the head of customer success, the CEO of the company, and the customer service rep on the CS team. Finally, I want you to look at all the results as if you're a customer, and I want you to give some feedback. So I've given it the play, the problem, I've set a scene, and then I've cast multiple actors and told them what I want them to do in that scene. Now, here's the first result it's going to give me, right? So it says, here's the strategic consultant assessment. Here's the instructional designer doing the training program. Here's some of the reviews that I asked for. Here's the customer perspective. Now I'm going to start doing the asking and suggesting. I know that GPT is smarter than me. So I don't say, I want you to now review it from these other people. What I say is, who else should review the plan? Because you have the entire world at your fingertips. So what are you going to do next? And it goes, you know what? Here are 11 other people or other groups that you should have review your plan. And then what do you think I said next? Great. Can you do that, you think? Notice how I'm not making huge missives. I'm literally just asking it questions, and I'm asking it to do what it does best. Then it says, certainly, let's do that. It goes back and it provides feedback from each of these. And then I said, great, can you implement this? Boom, it starts to implement it. Now, can you re-review it from all those stakeholders? Absolutely, it does that. And by the way, if you want, I'm happy to share this link into the chat so you can read through this and you can play with this as much as you want. I'll do that at the end here, okay? Or you can email us or contact us on LinkedIn and we'll do that. We'll put our name at the end. So then it's going, yeah. And then I said, look, this is the powerful stuff. I don't say, let's do more feedback. I said, any other feedback? Like, what else? What am I missing? One sentence, like 7 words, right? And it says, here's 12 more people that should review this, or 12 more teams. Now, some of these beta test groups, feedback from shareholders, it's not going to be able to do those perfectly. But notice how every time I'm doing this, it's optimizing more and more and more and more so that when I finally get this in front of my real stakeholders, I know this is like reviewed. I know this is signed, sealed, delivered. I know this is at an 80% level rather than a 20% level. And
Hey,
look,
Josh,
now it's going to do this. Yeah,
I'm going
go
to
ahead.
stop you for just 1 second. So Gerard in the text asked if this will produce lower quality results if you don't give it the actors. And the answer to that, Gerard, is yes, right? The more you can set the context for ChatGPT, and part of the context is, who is it you want to have review this? Who are the people that are important? Now, you could, go ahead, Josh.
I just want to say,
going.
Yeah, you don't need to, if you don't know who the actors are, do what I said and said, who should review this? And have it fill in the actors. We just did that 3 times. So the magic of this, and I'll show you another example after this that Chuck hasn't even seen. But even if you started with just the play, right, or just the context, you can then add all this later. And so sometimes when I'm thinking about stuff, I get overwhelmed having to write a huge prompt and think about the cast and the scene and this. So I focus on the ask and suggest. And then at some point, I'm going to get to an end point where I go, I need to like clear the board. I need to start again. I need to restart the rehearsal. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Okay. Do you need to say something there, Chuck? I cut you off.
Nope, you're good. You went exactly where I was going next.
Awesome. Sorry. Yeah, we
no worries.
We read each other's minds. So now, can you help me build out this plan? I'm having it do all this. Now, here's what Chuck likes to call the secret sauce. Okay. I'm actually at the end going to lock the script. And to do that, I'm sort of repeating this process, which is I'm now going to say to GPT, I want you to change roles and I want you to be a prompt engineer. So here's what I say. And again, I'll copy and paste this prompt if you want into the chat. But again, you can figure out your own way to say this. It's a large language model. It will figure it out. So I say, this is a great place to stop. I like what I see so far. We had a lot of back and forth throughout this chat to get to this point. You did all this feedback and details. If I wanted to start where we ended up, what original prompt could I have given you at the very beginning that would have accomplished this? Like, what could have I said at the very beginning? So instead of going through this whole conversation, you would have just started with the end. And look at this. It literally writes out a prompt for me. Okay, so it's telling me now, if you want to do this again, here's where you'll start. And sometimes what I would do is take this, I'll open a new chat window, and you can do this with the free version, by the way. I haven't done anything you can't do with the free version. So you don't need images, you don't need all the context stuff, right? You can now take this, paste it into a new chat, and start again. But what I did is I went one step further, because y'all know I like to ask questions. So what did I say? Hey, anything else I should add, or did this capture it all? I challenge GPT to think another level further. Because again, it doesn't know. And what does it do? It goes, yeah, actually, the prompt captures most of what, but you might want to have it include these other things. And here would be that new prompt. And so it's actually making a better prompt than the one I even created through all this back and forth. Now, I wanted to go further than this, right? Because this is great for a one-time solution. But what I said is, you know what? I want to make this so that I can do this over and over again. Go ahead.
I'm going to jump in.
Yeah,
so I think Josh's last point about having ChatGPT give you that feedback after you think you're done is critical. ChatGPT doesn't know our endpoint other than what we've told it. And in some cases, we develop our own endpoint by saying, oh, I think this is what we need to have at the end. So that's what we work to with ChatGPT. But that follow-up prompt of, gosh, is there anything else I haven't thought of? Excuse me. A lot of times gets us ideas, gets us feedback, gets us solutions that are much elevated from where we originally had considered. So again, this is that supportive generative AI that has all of the knowledge in the world that can add to what you're thinking about and can partner with you and co-generate things with you to really elevate your work.
Yeah. And I'm seeing folks say, should you be polite? Does it make a difference? I always like to be polite, so I'll say please and thank you. It's going to remember how I'm interacting with it. Part of that's because it helps me talk to it in a certain way, right? It's how I like to engage, so I'm bringing myself into it. Will it make a difference? I'll let you figure that out. But, at least, yeah, like someone said, if you're nice to it, maybe when the robot overlords take over, they'll be nice to you.
Well,
right?
And to that point, as far as interacting with it, you can also, if you don't know this, you can ask it to provide responses at different levels. So, for example, if I need it to help me explain rocket propulsion, I could say, can you please, you're a nuclear physicist, could you please explain rocket propulsion to a fifth grader? And it will give me the information at a very cursory level. But then I can come back and I can say, great, could you now give me that same information for somebody who's graduated with a PhD in rocket science? And now I'm going to get a whole lot more detail, right? So it's both how you interact with it and how you ask for the information in return.
Different actors, right?
Yeah.
And then what you could do is say, I want you to look at it from a fourth grader, a seventh grader, a ninth grader, and give me the differences, right? And then read through that as though you're a customer, you're a client, you're a customer service, and tell me where the balance is, right? Now, I want to point this out because
imagine if you've built a training program for seventh graders about rocket propulsion, and now you want to use that same curriculum for a senior in high school. You can say at the end, great, now that we've built all of this and we've got all the framework and the information, could you please adapt this for a senior level physics class? And it's going to go through and it's going to give you all of that robust information.
Yeah. So, and I want to make sure, because we're running out of time and I still want to show some stuff there. So I then said to this, by the way, hey, this was great. It does this one-time thing. I want you to make this prompt more dynamic so I could use this over and over and over again, no matter what the industry is, no matter what the problem I'm running into is. And I said, can you create it that way? And it goes, sure. Here's a dynamic prompt that you can use. And look how huge this is, by the way, that will ask you all these questions and will fill something out the way you like it. And I want to show you how I took this in a very specific training, learning, and development example and made a tool that my team can use to create learner personas. Chuck hasn't even seen this, so I'm going to bring this up because I think even he will find this interesting. Now, notice I started with the simplest possible way I could go. What's the play? Could you help me develop a master prompt for GPT focused on creating learning professionals, right? Or a GPT prompt, and a GPT is like a bot, or it's a admin. It's all this stuff I'll show you in a second, right? And then I sort of said maybe kind of context, which is this for L&D professionals to use in creating their programs. And it did all of this stuff for me and wrote the prompt. And then I said, let's adjust this. Could you look at this from the perspective, I'm giving it actors, of a chief learning officer, a head of L&D for learning, an instructional designer, and integrate that feedback to make this a more powerful prompt? And it did that. And then I said, hey, I think it needs to create different personas. It should ask other questions. And it does that. Now, there's a new feature that GPT rolled out, GPT Pro, so when you're going to get it, and it allows you to create basically your own chat GPTs, right? So at the top here, you can see I've created a few different ones. I created one for this learner persona. So I went through this over and over and over again and kept asking it information. And look, all I'm doing is giving it very simple, pointed pieces of feedback and asking it questions. And I will give you a link to this conversation. Actually, it's hard for me to give you a link to this conversation, but I'll give you a link to the thing I'm about to come up with. And by the way, I said, you know what I want here in the end? I want you to create personas. And then I want you to create images for each persona. And then I want you to print those images off into a PDF. I took all of that and I put it into this thing called GPT. And now I have my own learner persona generator. And I can share this with you if you want. And if you have Pro, I think you can access it. I don't know if you don't have Pro, if you can access it yet, but I'll share it with you in an email afterwards. Okay. Or I'll try getting it into the chat when we take questions. And I just want to show you what this can. I go, let's get started. And now it takes that prompt that I already built. Oh, of course it's going to do this for me. Here, let's see if we can get it to rethink. Might be overloaded right now. There we go. And it says, hey, I need some information. And look at this. Now it is literally helping me doing this again. And I can say, what are the types of learning program you're creating and what's the sector? Now, by the way, you could create a prompt and do all this in a way that is even more thorough. I wanted to keep it simple. And so I said, sure. Let's say this is manufacturing is the industry, and this is a new hire training. I could be more or less. I'm trying to show you how I'm giving it as little as possible. And now look at this. Because I went through all that work and created this prompt and did all that work, now it's creating my persona for me. And just to show you how easy this is, I'm going to let this go, right? Because we have limited time and I know we want to take questions, right? But I want to go back here real quickly and just show you. I'm going to copy this one that we made. Okay, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to Explore, show you how I can do this. And I realize we're probably going to run out of time here. So if you need to hop on and stop me, I'll just keep doing this in the background while we take questions.
Josh, this is Philip.
Yep.
I just want to say that this is so dynamic that if we have to run a little over, we will, and the recording will continue. So
okay.
For those who do need to go, but go ahead. I don't want to use your time.
So look, I just took, and this is recorded so you can watch later. I took this CSAT improvement thing. I took that master prompt that I had it build. I'm putting it into this back end here. And by the way, you can create these in a whole different way. I like to do it this way. Okay. But it's doing this. And now watch, I'm going to say create. I'm going to test this out. And now I have a tool, an agent that I can use over and over again that's going to help me create an improvement training program. And look at this. It's asking me to enter all this information. And if I was to go back, I would actually say, hey, can you do this in a way that is more conversational? I can enter all this information and it's going to start doing the thing you already saw it do. But now I don't have to recreate everything. And I want to point out how by doing this back and forth, right, by basically having a rehearsal and talking to this AI as though it's an actor in this rehearsal, I had it create the way that it needs to do something. So now it can perform this performance over and over and over again. And I'm just going to lock it. And by the way, if you can't deal with this whole CSAT and, this whole GPT because you don't have the pro version, that's fine. Copy and paste the prompt that you made, put it into a Google Doc, and the next time you run into that problem, paste it in there and use it again. Bada bing, bada boom. And by the way, I will save this and I will share this link out with you as well. Philip is putting out my email, so you can email me. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you do that, I also think we'll probably follow up with some sort of follow-up email. So I'll make sure to include the links in there, in addition to maybe some other stuff. But I know we have 6 minutes left. I realize it was dynamic, so we might get more than 6 minutes of questions. But I want to pause there. I'm going to stop sharing, and I want to make sure that if there are questions coming in or comments, I'm able to address those. And so can Chuck. So does anyone want to, so let's see what's coming in, or Phil, so we had an issue with, Ron says, we had an issue with ChatGPT expressing emotions in role plays, especially anger at an elevated level. An example like rage by youth when we were counseling them. Any suggestions? I would tell it very specifically, right? Don't show emotions. Or I need you to set your emotions within this specific level. Or if it does that and you're in a role play, what I'll say is, hey, let's step out of the role play for a second, GPT. That was very angry the way you did that. And that's going to be overwhelming. Can you redo that like this? It'll give you finally a response you want. And then I'll say, thanks. How could I have adjusted my master prompt so that you would always have this level of boundary around it? And then I would do that over and over and over again. And then I would QA test it. The only difference between doing this and making a program is that instead of having to code in Python or Fortran or whatever it is, right? English, or your language of choice, is now the language of programming. And by the way, if you wanted to know, just throw it out there. You want to say, hey, I need to figure out how to do this, but I need to write my own program. I need it to go through an API. I want to put it into Storyline or Lectora and have it do that. How would I do it? You ask GPT. How would I do that? And it will literally write the code for you and walk you step by step how to do it.
So, and Josh, I want to jump in. That's a really great example. I recently had a problem that I needed a solution for. I did not need an answer originally. I needed I needed to be able to change the playback speed of videos in Articulate Storyline at different time spots on the video. So I went to ChatGPT and said, here's the problem I have. How do I deal with this? ChatGPT came back and said, that's a JavaScript problem. And I said, great. I don't know how to write JavaScript. To which it replied, fine, here's your script. So starting where going back to this idea that I didn't even know the endpoint I needed to get to, other than I had this problem to solve, it was able to get that for me.
Yeah, I want to respond to something Gina said, which is there are things you need to be aware of. For instance, ChatGPT believes in learning styles and other debunked concepts, frameworks, etc. Right? And someone, Sandy, I think said, it only pulls information up to 2019. It's up to 2021. So there are two things to know. First of all, the newest version of ChatGPT, at least Pro on 4, has a Bing search capability, so it can go out and gather information. That being said, it is data in, right? It is based on the data it's in there. So a couple things I would generally say is, one, I need you to not make up information, right? Or I need you to find information that's only up to date to X, Y, and Z. The other thing is, this is co-generative AI. It is going to make mistakes. The value now you have is, instead of having to create something, you can respond to it. So if it gave you learning styles, like I think you might have seen in my persona prompt, where it said, what are the learning styles, or what are this? That's where I would then go back to it and say, hey, learning styles are debunked. Please remove that from this and let's create the prompt again. And by the way, Alana, you had a great point. If you say, I need you to provide citations for everything that you're doing here, it will actually provide those citations for you. And in some cases, I've had it do that and say, I made this up as an example. And then I can check it and say, hey, I don't want you to make anything up. If there's not a real citation, get rid of it. And tell GPT the youth needs to respond in a voice expressing rage. Well, you don't have to tell it. instead of saying a voice expressing rage, I would say, what are the type of users you're dealing with? And then give it feedback to say, this is or isn't correct. It's still co-generative. It's not perfect, right? And so you need to set boundaries for it, and then you need to quality test it. Dynamic. So really quickly, someone asked about dynamic. What I mean by dynamic is we asked it to do something to create a CSAT program for a very specific problem. And what I wanted to do is say, can you make that more dynamic or more generic? So I can copy and paste this prompt. I can start over again, and you'll ask me for the specific details to fill in the actor, the play, these issues. And that way, it can always ask me for new information, and it's dynamic to my problem, right? If that is, if that's still confusing, let me know. Someone said, I'm unfamiliar with this tool, hence my pleasure today. Advice on where to start learning it. You can go to YouTube, right? You can go look on, you can go, ELB has boot camps, all sorts of stuff. But the thing I would say is most useful is OpenGPT.
Get your fingers on the keyboard.
Go to chat.openai.com, go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I'm new. How do I use you?
And so give it a problem you want to solve and see what it does.
Yeah. By the way, I realized I didn't get to put all the links in. So here's what I promise is if you reach out to me, jpenzel@elblearning.com. If you find us on LinkedIn, right, here's our names again, so you can write them down. I guarantee I'm the only Josh Penzel. He's the only Chuck Sigmund. And I believe we will send up a follow-up email, and I will make sure that we include the PowerPoint presentation. I will include links to all of this stuff, and we will make sure that you have what you need. And again, if there was something we brushed over or you didn't get enough on, I know Chuck and I are both super open to having conversations about this. This is what we really love talking about and we love to do. So
please find us on LinkedIn and let's have conversations.
Chuck and Josh, I'm speechless. It's just been so dynamic and thought-provoking here today. Thank you. Getting a lot of accolades here in chat. So much great guidance here for dealing with our ever-evolving world here of technology. I'm also going to launch on people's browsers right now more to request from ELB Learning a request to call or get more information. So get AI ready. Just click on that browser that just opened and fill it out, because there's a lot more great stuff right out there with ELB and guidance on all of these, all of the technologies that are available now. So please reach out to ELB Learning. And also, Josh and Chuck, any final words or guidance for those who want more or want more information?
So I would say follow Josh and I on LinkedIn, because we are both doing a number of different presentations about AI and ChatGPT, and we'd love to have you join us.
And ELB Learning, who we work with really closely and who sponsored this and who I do custom AI solutions with. I think you just got their, the link out there. I would go there, check it out, and just connect with us, figure out what you need. And the number one thing, the thing I'll leave you with is start playing with this now. Even if your tech department, your legal department, all these folks are saying, hey, you're not allowed to do it yet, that's fine. Go do it on a personal device, do it with something personal, because I guarantee they are going to say it's okay at some point, and you don't want to be catching up when they do.